I hear this a lot. James, young voters are just not into this. It's two candidates. One's in the 80s, one's is almost in the 80s, and they're concerned about things that Washington or politicians, and you just can't blame them for, oh, fuck you.
You just heard from Democratic strategist and the scolder extraordinaire of progressives. His name's James Carville. I'm sure you're very familiar with him. And he wants to take this time to yell at young people who aren't tripping over themselves to cast their ballots for Joe Biden. Now, Carville is so furious that he's having difficulty positioning his camera so it's not up his nose. But nonetheless, he's looking at recent polling that has shown that Biden is in fact hemorrhaging support from young Americans, the same young Americans that he relied on heavily to get him elected in 2020. So a recent Harvard youth poll conducted among 2010 18 to 29-year-olds found that Biden would outperform Trump 50% to 37% among registered young voters and 56% to 37% among likely young voters. Among all young adults below 30, those figures narrow with 45% supporting Biden and a whopping 37% for Trump. Now, obviously, Biden has garnered more support among young voters, but Trump has very clearly increased his support among young voters since 2020. I saw some analysis of these poll results, and the big argument for those who are really coping with this information is that, it's okay. These young voters are gonna turn out for Biden. They probably have a little bit of amnesia over the Trump years. They don't remember how bad it is, but they'll remember. They'll show up to the polls. By the way, 16%, according to this Harvard youth poll, remain undecided. So there's still room for Biden to improve. It's just that it doesn't appear that he's willing to do the things that young people care about the most. And obviously, his handling of the war in Gaza is something that has young people really worked up and angry. So Biden is still ahead of Trump among that age bracket. However, by contrast, the president had a much higher lead at this stage during the 2020 election, according to the poll. 60% of likely young voters under 30 supported Biden, while only 30% supported Trump. 51% of all young adults supported Biden, while only 28% supported Trump. So overall, that's a 6-point drop for Biden and a 9-point jump for Trump in this cycle among young voters. And by the way, oftentimes the argument was that young voters don't even show up to vote. They certainly did in 2020. And so it's not even about getting them to say they support the Democratic candidate in these polls. It's also about exciting them enough, encouraging them enough to show up to vote on election day.
Yeah, it's just classic Democratic Party entitlement. This is like to me, I see this as in the vein of that attitude of quote unquote demographics or destiny, right? As the browning of America, if you will, happens, Democratic victories will be inevitable. It won't be because Democrats are delivering incredible outcomes for their people. No, it's just these brown folks are gonna come and just automatically fall at our feet and sweat us. And we're realizing that that's not true. Latino males specifically loving up the Republican Party as much as anybody in this country. And that theory of the case is wrong, but I think it's grounded in this same kind of attitude that these people, like it's their religion to vote Democrat or something. Like it's a religious right. Like it's not an intellectual decision, that they don't need to be engaged, that they don't need to be, like you said, excited about coming out for these Democrats, that it should just happen by birthright for these people with the D in front of their name on the ballot. And it's why they lose all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I am so interested to see how this general election plays out and how the vote breaks down demographically speaking, because right now we have these polls, sure, but you also have some anecdotal evidence based on what you're seeing in big blue cities, where polls indicate that people, Black people, Latinos, as you mentioned, are really starting to lose their support for the Democrats and the Democratic candidate here, Joe Biden. And you're right, I think it does have to do with the fact that in many election cycles in a row now, they keep seeing that their vote is taken for granted and they're not getting the policies that they are told Democrats represent. And then when push comes to shove, once the Democrat is in charge, you have him at the head of the executive branch, you see that he doesn't really fight for the policies that convince people to vote for him in the first place, whether it's the child tax credits, which should have been made permanent. I mean, think about what an electoral nightmare it is to give people something that really helps them financially, the child tax credit, and then you take it away because it's not a permanent program. People are gonna remember that happened, and there's a political price to pay for it. And by the way, I mean, Carville's tactic is to get young people on the Biden train by scaring them into thinking about all the horrible things that the Supreme Court will do to them if they don't elect Biden for re-election. So let's take a look at what he says here.
Are you watching what is happening in the Supreme Court? If you're 26, do you see what they're doing? First of all, they're going to take every right that you could possibly have away from you. And then you tell these young people, if you don't get involved right now in this election, they're going to be involved in your life for the rest of your freaking life. And if Trump and Roberts and Alito and Gorsuch and Thomas and Leonard Leo and the Heritage Foundation, if they get a hold, there will be no government left. There will be no rights left. You'll live under theocracy. You'll end up with Christian nationalism. But that's all right, you little 26-year-old. You don't feel like the election's important to me. They're not addressing the issues that I care about.
Oh, good job. I'm sure that's gonna persuade people to show up and vote for Biden. Like, this guy's a Democratic strategist. This is your strategy to mock people who aren't happy with the Democratic Party or the Democratic candidate. And it's not to say the Supreme Court isn't important, but Waz, I gotta say something about this whole Supreme Court argument, okay? You have Democrats urging Justice Sotomayor to step down from the Supreme Court because she has diabetes, and they're afraid that if Trump gets elected, well, then he gets to appoint yet another Supreme Court justice. Do you not understand how insane it is to ask a much younger woman in the Supreme Court to step down because you insist on supporting the 81-year-old who's unpopular to run for re-election? I just find it so insulting. How do they not see how insulting that is? It is so deeply insulting. If I were Justice Sotomayor, I would be furious with people calling for me to step down from the Supreme Court.
Yeah, these folks are ridiculous, and it's not hard to decipher. They're not very clever. And here's the thing that I love about what James Carville just said, and it speaks to what we mentioned about the hair on fire rhetoric that we heard in the lead up to Trump. What in the world are the Democrats doing right now in response to all of these threats? What can this guy point me to that getting Democrats elected has actually helped in any way, shape, or form? Why is he not pointing out, like, look at what the Democrats are doing because of X, Y, Z? He can't make that argument. They don't behave like this is an emergency. So then when you now throw the blame on the powerless as voters, who, like, as if when we put y'all in there, we get what we asked you for anyway, to now flip the blame on them and not the people who are already in power. It's craziness. It's the height of insanity.
Let me try to be productive here, okay? Because it is true that the Biden administration has accomplished some good things. Now, they did it through executive order, or through government agency order, right? Within their capacity to address certain issues that impact Americans. And so if I were Carville, I wouldn't mock young voters and make fun of how they feel about Joe Biden. I would just remind them about what Joe Biden recently did, what the Transportation Department recently did in regard to automatic refunds when your flights are delayed or canceled, last minute. That's a huge deal. That's gonna improve travel for a lot of people, whether it be for work or for play. There was another story that we covered having to do with the FTC. I'm forgetting the details at the moment, but Lena Khan, as the head of the FTC, has been absolutely fantastic. Her efforts in breaking up monopolies. Like, these are the types of things that I would talk about and be like, okay, and remember what was, who was appointed to the National Labor Relations Board under Trump and how they didn't look out for workers, whereas the NLRB under Biden has been much better and has been far more progressive in fighting for workers' rights. But Carville doesn't care about that. Like, the thing that bothers me the most about how Carville handled that video is the sense of entitlement, which I have now completely lost all patience for in all contexts. The second I get, oh, this person is entitled, it triggers me, right? Because we're all squeezed, we're all doing our best. And then when another party doesn't hold up their side of the deal or is behaving poorly, for them to turn around and say, no, I'm entitled to your vote, or I'm entitled to your money, I'm entitled to whatever, makes me lose my mind. Entitlement gets under my skin more than anything in politics these days.
Anna, Barack Obama, the saint, the Pope of the Democratic Party, the most popular Democrat of my life, still insanely popular with the base, still insanely influential within the Democratic Party establishment. In his own book, this man said, oh, I was president, but I just couldn't do anything. I just saw it, but I just couldn't do anything. That's what he says throughout his entire book. And now the people are supposed to hit the pavement for the Democrats to go out and save them from it's insane. It's insane, dude.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.